First of all, maybe a quick presentation of what I call the three-level crisis. First, there is a debt crisis, and I just reading that because my English is not is not perfect. Is the idea there has been an accumulation of debt during the neoliberal phases of capitalism, and the crisis is that this accumulation of debt exceeds the surplus value, the real true wealth produced, and that austerity is meant to validate, to post-validate these drawing rights on the surplus value by means of austerity. And there is a displacement from the private debts to public debts to austerity. And finally, the question is who is going to pay the bill of the crisis? And the answer, the neoliberal answer, is the majority of the people and not the financial the powers, not the financial capitalists, not the responsible for that crisis. But there is a second level, which is the specific crisis of a euro, what I call the euro system. That means a total divergence between what I call the soft countries, with me, the periphery countries, and the north countries, that is the core countries, and especially the group around Germany. And the general idea is, in the mainstream analysis, it's because there has been too high wages in the periphery countries, and they have to make an internal devaluation, and the only way out of the crisis is to lower wages, more flexibility of the labor market. This is, I'm going to say this analysis is wrong, but under all this level of crisis, there is a crisis of profitability. And you see in this picture that in this graph that the profit rate is falling down in the south countries and in France, which is really near the south country in this case, when it is going up in the north countries with the breakdown with the crisis. But there is in this case a problem of divergence between the different profit rates in the Eurozone. Okay, so first proposition, high wages are not the source of a crisis and trade imbalances. I'm going to go very quickly. Here you see the wage shares in the different countries. In the left side of the graph, you see that all the wage shares were constant or declining. So it is enough to say that the wages are not the main cause of a crisis. I could come back to in more details. Second proposition, there's no relation between the labor costs and the export performance, the export growth before the crisis. In the horizontal rectangle, you see two groups of countries. On the right, Greece and Spain have the same performance in terms of growth of exports that Austria and Germany, with totally different evolution of labor cost in euros. So there's no link, and even the European Commission says it. The links between export performance and labor cost is weak and a secondary order of magnitude, and hence the former, the labor cost, cannot be the cause of a later the trade imbalances. It's analysis of the European Commission, but its recommendations are totally the reverse of this analysis. First, and here you see a direct link between two things. The changes in current account balance, the trade imbalances, and the link is very simple with the domestic demand growth. And the true reason, the true cause of trade imbalances is the differences between the growth, or the rate growth of domestic demand in different countries. And it is important to see that because today, more or less, there is less trade deficits in the South countries, and it's not because of lower wages, it's because of the recession, of the internal recession, and it's the worst way of adjusting trade, the supposed trade imbalances. So there is a question that you talked about before. The question is, there is a large consensus among economists to say this is a stupid policy, illiterate, as somebody said. But the question is it not a neoliberal shock therapy? And the answer is more or less evident. I showed just these two links between different countries, which is maybe a little complicated, but the idea, the first relationship in red, say when more austerity leads to less growth, and more austerity leads to more debt. So and you see, especially the case of Greece is a very good example, but it's true for every country. The country which have more austerity, fiscal austerity, have finally more debt in proportion of GDP. So it's totally, it's apparently absurd, and it's, let's say, the Keynesian critics of this kind of policy is quite accurate. But if you see another, what you call the hidden target, it is rational from a capitalist point of view, because fiscal austerity makes more unemployment, and more employment is a way to restore the profit. And you see that more austerity gives more profit to the countries. So it means what we have to understand, that we are faced with a shock therapy, which is apparently absurd, but it is not absurd if you consider that the true target is to, let's say, destroy the social state, the welfare state, and to restore the profitability in all the countries in Europe. And so the argument, I just come to the real program of the European Commission. It was in a document that was a mistake to publish it, because it's exactly what is the program, what is the objective, the target of the European Commission. It's in an official document, Labour Market Development in Europe, and in a box at the end of the document, almost at the end of the document, they said exactly what they want to do. They want to decrease minimum wages, decrease the bargaining coverage of collective agreements, reform the bargaining system in a less centralized way. For instance, there are different techniques for favor. The idea is to favor the negotiation at the firm level agreements, because the relations of forces is always weaker at this level. And finally, they say overall reduction in the wage-setting power of trade unions. It's also explicitly an offensive against the trade unions, against the power of negotiation of trade unions. And here you see that it's another proof. This graph may be complicated, but are very important. You see the real wage growth is very, you see the effect of wage austerity in the South countries. You see this orange curve which is going down. And theoretically, it is meant to help competitiveness of these countries. But in fact, these lower wages are not used to best competitiveness, but are used to restore the exporters' profit margin, and you see the other curve in orange for the South countries, which is going up. And this is very important, but because it's a technical, I see it, critics of the argumentation. You have to lower your wage to be more competitive. But in fact, they are lowering wages, but they are keeping the money to restore the profit margin. And this is an illustration of the two targets of this policy. And you see here, in Greece especially, the ratio between the export prices and the labor costs is rising very much. That means that it's the same idea, but in the manufacturing sector. And you see that all the Greece, Spain, Portugal, all the South country with real, very tough policies against wages are restoring more and more profit margin in the export sector. So the real targets are fiscal adjustment, so cuts in public spending, shrinking the welfare state, and labor market flexibility. This is and we are going to see the effects. First, a rise in employment. You see the Eurozone and European Union. It's at the highest level since 10 years and since 2 decades or 3 decades. Second, there is employment is going down, and here you see the double dip of employment. It means that there has been the crisis, then a little recuperation with Keynesian policies, and the double dip, it starts going down again because of this austerity policy. You can read the histories of policies in this graph. I go very... there is also a change in the structure of an employment, and you see here that the part-time employment is going up very, very quickly, when the full-time employment is going down. It means that the more precarious forms of employment are gaining more important proportion in the structure of employment. So I just want to give there is a debate on the strategic issue. So what there's problem on the debt, we can discuss it in the debate, but on the strategy of extension, this is an intermediate strategy between two strategic positions. The first one is leaving the euro. The second one is waiting for the good Europe, so you can wait a long time. So the idea is in one country, unilaterally takes the good measures, and it is a kind of a break with the European laws, the European treaties, but it is the political risk of breaking European Union's rules is accepted, challenged, but the idea is to propose these new rules to the rest of Europe and to say it not in a national logic, but in a pan-European logic, saying we take these measures. They are against the European laws, but I think they can be extending to the whole European Union because they are cooperative. The very important difference is between non-cooperative and cooperative policies. Cooperative policies is a policy that wins when everybody is making the same policy. Non-cooperative policy is a policy when you win against the other. For instance, a devaluation, you try to take market market shares to your competitors, to the other countries. So essentially, it's not a cooperative policy, it's a policy which is against cooperation with the other countries. So I give an example. The problem is to find demands which are unifying the different countries. And on a trade union point of view, one of the ideas which is discussed is the idea of a European system of minimum wages, with this rule which could be the minimum wage is every country is, for instance, 60% of the median wage being the wage with 50% more and 50% less than this median wage. And this is an example of a universal rule which is the same for all the countries, but which take in account the differences in the level of development of these countries. And it is a shield against wage dumping between the countries, with the arguments that if we lower wage in the country, we are going to be more competitive, but it's the same argument in the other countries, and it goes down in every country. And it's also a shield against low wages in each country. For example, in Germany, the DGB was not totally in favor of a minimum wage some years ago, and the argument coming from Verdi, the trade union in the service sectors, was that the wages were going down so quickly that it was necessary to put a frontier, to put something to, and this is the main argument which changed the majority position of the DGB in Germany. And it is a topical debate in Germany and Switzerland, with problems with Italian and Sweden and Swedish unions that we are against the idea of a minimum wage, a national minimum wage, because I think it's against it will weaken the trade unions in their country. And finally, very three tentative conclusions. The policy, the European policy and the European government policies are, the aim is a destruction of a social model. It leads to a social regression for 1 or 2 decades. That's what we have to understand. European integration, what was truncated, was incomplete, could not work, but the exit from the euro could cost even more. And finally, it's the same conclusion. We need a coordinated refusal of the counter reforms and a proposal, international proposal for implementation of solidarity rules.